because they're simply in unbelief. And that God can do this, deliberately shut people in unbelief so that he can have mercy on them at a later time. I mean, it's a beautiful thing to realize that God wastes nothing. It's not, like the example that I gave you of the largemouth bass. God is not wasting all those eggs just to get a few people into his kingdom. God's not wasting 80% of the human race just to get a few of us into his kingdom. God wastes nothing. Only about 20% of the world's population even remotely identifies themselves as Christian. We have to deal with this dilemma, and it's time you understood what the Bible teaches. Now, I want to offer you something here. It's entitled, If God So Loved the World, Why Are So Many People Going to Hell? Now, that's a catchy title to a book, but the truth of the matter is, they're not going to hell. God has a plan of salvation for humanity. Listen to this intro. Towards the end of a long airplane flight, the flight attendant sat down next to me and my wife and began chatting. When she found out that I was a church minister, a troubled look came across her face. Her father had just died. He hadn't been a Christian, nor had he led a particularly good life. After the funeral, she had talked to her priest, and he said that her father was not saved and was burning in hell. With tears in her eyes, she asked me, "Do you think my dad is burning in hell?" Let me tell you something. You need this book. If you have ever been concerned about the loss of a loved one, now maybe you just sort of passed it off. Maybe you just sort of, I heard of a story one time of a mother who had an alcoholic son, and everybody in the community knew he was an alcoholic. And he was on a construction site and hit his head, knocked himself out, and laid out there all night. No one found him until the next morning, froze to death. He died. And later, she claimed she saw a vision of her son in heaven. And I guess was able to live with herself, able to live with her consciousness, because she claimed she saw a vision of her son in heaven. What I'm saying is, there is an absolute truth that is found in your Bible. Much of the information that we have been taught is a lie about your Bible. For example, what we've been taught about hell is wrong. You got to understand it. What we've been taught wrongly about who is in charge. We've been left ignorant of God's real plan of salvation. And this book will teach you God's real plan of salvation. That God is able to conclude people. He's big enough, and he can do it if he wants to. He can conclude people in unbelief so that he can have mercy on them at a later time. And it's a beautiful picture. That book will give you so much encouragement, and you'll have a new respect for God. Instead of 80% burning in hell for all eternity, you will have a new profound respect for God. You will have a love for God that maybe you haven't experienced in a very long time. You see, I believe that every sinner who God has shut up in unbelief will get his day of salvation in a future resurrection. I'm David Freeman, and that is exactly what's in your Bible.